now to talk through the big issues of the day. Sarah Sparks is with us, Sparks Consulting, and Dileepa Fonseka, Business Desk Senior Journalist. Morena, good morning.
Morena.
Good to see you both, as always. Now, we'll start with the Air New Zealand strikes. It sounds like, because they're going to, I've just slipped my mind, what are they going, mediated bargaining, and it sounds like from speaking to them both this morning that it will come to some conclusion and then they'll have to sort of get on with it, which is good news. But in the meantime, the union apparently hasn't even told the airline what their sort of bottom line is in terms of pay. Is that unusual?
Actually, I'm not sure if it's so unusual in the sense that, like, a lot of these negotiations are not just straight transactional. Like, they're not just about the number figure alone. They're often about conditions and things around it. So, you know, people might be during a negotiation, you know, company might say, oh, you know, we can't do that, but we can alter this in your conditions. That might actually alter the bottom line. So I can sort of see the reason for a bit of reticence about saying their exact bottom line, because that might not actually be the bottom line. There might be an alternative arrangement they can come to, you know, without the money being the figure. But, I mean, I think this whole thing with Air New Zealand, I mean, for a lot of us looking on, it's just the top of many things, right? Like, there's the on-time performance, you know, even without the strikes. And I sort of wonder how much of that kind of slowly erosion of sort of customer satisfaction around Air New Zealand. I know you're not necessarily seeing that in their statistics around customer satisfaction, but definitely anecdotally when you talk around, and you look at the on-time performance, people are less satisfied with the airline they had previously. And you wonder how much of that is going back on the staff and how much that's making the staff go back and be like, well, hey, hang on, you know, if I'm getting, this job is a lot tougher because I'm getting a lot of blowback from customers, now I care a lot more about, you know, bottom line on pay, these other kind of condition requirements as well.
Yeah, it's a good point because I think the reputation has taken a massive hit, hasn't it, over the last couple of years?
Disclaimer, I used to fly for Air New Zealand. I was a hostie back in the day in the 90s when Briley's was in charge. And I'm looking at this going, you know, flight attendants, they are, you know, they're the safety feature. So there's sort of a cultural clash here between commercialism and also collective responsibility, because it's a big deal. It is a big deal for crew to go out on strike, you know, and because they do take their job absolutely seriously. So I'm with you. This is, I think, an indicator of other issues. And, you know, a plane up in the air, you've got to think safety first, right? So it's, it's quite timely that this happens. Really hope that they come to an agreement that everyone can live with in terms of mediation. But I believe there's greater things happening here.
At the same time, though, you look at the ticket prices and then you go, oh, God, if they're having to pay more in wages, I mean, where does it end, you know?
But safety first, seriously,
well,
you know.
Well, the safest thing would be to not fly at all.
People were willing to pay that Air New Zealand premium because there was a premium service attached, right?
Yes.
And, you know, and so when the planes aren't turning up on time, you're getting, you know, delays and things. I think that just, it's kind of like they're at risk of sort of getting into a bit of a doom loop here if they don't fix not just the worker issues but other issues around it, because people will not be willing to pay as much money for some of these tickets eventually as well.
Go back to basics and get it right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right?
Now, yeah, totally. And stop flying, you know, they're doing all these testing with, you know, e-planes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, drop all that
Yeah.
and just fly your actual ones on time.
Correct.
Well, although I will say I think that part of these problems around Air New Zealand are because they didn't have necessarily like a longer term view as they could have. Like they didn't raise capital as early as they could after the pandemic. They were one of the last airlines to sort of do that, so that kind of put them behind the 8 ball. I know that wasn't entirely their fault. There's also partially government not being willing to stump up for a capital raise, but still, you know, you're in the situation that you're in, regardless of what happens around it. You know, it's still the situation you're in.
Right, the energy announcement, dying to know what you think of the LNG thing, Dileepa, because they had that Frontier report that was like, don't do it, and then now they're like, yeah.
It's an interesting thing because, you know, with these LNG terminals, we're not the first country to have this idea. I actually went to Thailand, you know, a few years ago. Went to visit a LNG terminal because Thailand used to get a lot of its energy through natural gas. That there's, like us, the natural gas reserves started wearing down over time. They started looking. Then they needed a substitute, so they came up with this idea of a kind of LNG terminal. And the problem they ran into was that they ended up when they actually really needed it, or as this problem getting worse, the Ukraine crisis happened. That sent up LNG prices, all around the world, demand for LNG infrastructure, and that basically, at the time when they needed it, then suddenly they were put in a position where the government was subsidizing the prices of electricity, and that was borrowed money to subsidize those prices. So I think that you can get into, if you're not careful with how you use it, you can get into a bad situation with some of these LNG solutions. This is also not going to arrive, I don't think, from the timeline they've outlined in time for the winter 2027, which was the whole big push for it, right?
Totally.
This was a kind of a short sort of stopgap sort of solution. So it's not going to go for that. And I just think there are dangers with accelerated timelines around some of these LNG projects. I don't know whether we should necessarily expect it to be delivered at the time scale that it's been said to. And if we did deliver to that time scale, there are potentially other problems that might arise, cost blowouts, that kind of thing. And of course, we're going to be paying for any cost blowouts because there's a
We're on the
levy.
hook. We're on the hook.
And that's north of, it's not $1 billion, it's north of $1 billion.
Yes.
Said. Yeah.
Sarah, do we just swallow it because we have to do something because we've done nothing, and doing nothing will ensure that there will be another crunch?
Well, I'm looking at this as being a tactical measure. Where's the strategy? The minister has been asked about the strategy, and he didn't expand on what it is.
It's and.
Yeah.
Did you?
So, I'm about self-determination. Where is our self-determining energy, renewable energy strategy? And I'm like apolitical here, so there's no sort of, Green Party in my ear. But, everything that I see, and being, tangata whenua, I'm thinking, is this going to be enduring? Is this sustainable? Is this actually, and you're dependent on overseas prices by importing it in. So I don't see the leadership here, personally.
Dileepa, what about the argument we have to do something? Because if we do nothing, we'll end up in the same position.
Well, we do have to do something.
What would you do that instead of LNG, I guess is the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think actually the thing is progressing LNG, I think there's lots of things you could do to progress this LNG idea, and you could progress it along a normal timeline and see where it goes. And in the meantime, you could see, what other generation options are available, what other kind of storage opportunities are available. Because I think that if we'd been able to do an emergency solution, that would be a different question. But actually, in this current instance, we're actually talking about something that's, probably, 2028. Probably, I would have. They said, maybe it might come in 2027. It's, you're probably talking 2028 at least. So this is like longer term than what we originally thought. So I would say, you kind of got to go either one way or the other. Either you're trying to find the urgent solution, and you're really accelerating things, or you do look at it from a strategic point of view, and you say, look, there's only a limited amount of things we can do,
and we'll just wear it for a couple of crunch years.
Because the other issue is like, if we don't think about it carefully, some of these temporary solutions could actually be rolled back. If we decide on an LNG tanker, bring in a tanker to generate energy. Some of those, I think in India had a case where when the Ukraine crisis happened, the company just cancelled the shipping contract, the 10-year contract, and took the ship somewhere else.
And that's the issue about being dependent, as opposed to figuring it out here, our own solutions, and having those time horizons.
Yeah.
Even a basic strategy with time horizons, immediate, medium, long term. We haven't seen that.
Then you just go down there and sort them out, Sarah. It sounds like you need to. And then everyone goes, we shouldn't have closed Marsden Point, but we won't get into that.
Should we have regulated the industry?
Do you think doctors need to find love in the regions? Is that the problem?
Well, I mean, if they find, what's to stop them finding love in the regions, then moving out of the regions? What's the question that occurred to me?
What if they find love in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Look, let's not flirt. Let's fix the system. There are issues around workforce you know, but there's answers out in communities as well. That's actually an area that I work a lot in terms of health advocacy for rural and remote areas. And I think one thing that could be done in terms of our new medical students coming through, and we've got Waikato Medical School that's being stood up, is that we should actually have an arrangement where they go out in the field to the rural and remote areas for a period of time, because we're going to face an issue of these long-term GPs that are retiring. As well as we've got a rise of nurse prescriptors who are doing more prescribing, but the answers are actually out in the community. We ask the nannies. I know nannies that are emailing on the Kumaro Vine to get their mokopuna who've studied away, who are overseas, to come home. So there's a whānau connection, because you've got to have that connection.
You do. You've got to have some connection, don't you?
Yeah.